to Where's Your Focus? All right, here we go. We're getting it in here. So we're live stream. We're here with you live. Welcome to Where's Your Focus? My name is Asia Rain. We've got Jenica and Pushti with us today. The three of us will be talking about, it's actually a continuation or a part two of a conversation that we actually had together. There was other guests last time. September 14th is when we began our conversation that was around domestic violence, domestic abuse. And we wanted to kind of take a different angle, not necessarily hitting it head on and just kind of exhausting what we already know is there, but making sure that, or kind of bringing and opening up a conversation that talks a little bit more about the empowerment after you've recognized that there has been an abusive situation, or that you are in an abusive situation, or that there are things that you don't just kind of just walk away from and it's finished. So having these conversations about the empowerment side as we're recognizing the domestic violence, domestic abuse that is present in a lot of people's lives is something that this conversation is really focusing on. And so if you know anybody that would be interested or you feel like could benefit from what you're hearing today, by all means, please share. In the comments below here on Facebook, you will actually be able to have a link to the part one conversation that this is the continuation of. So we're doing a series basically of this empowerment after domestic violence, domestic abuse. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to Jenica and Pushti and have them say hello, to give a brief overview of who they are, where they are, what they like to do, how their specialty is, what their gifts are, and then we can launch into this conversation. Pushti, we'll start with you.
There, I'm unmuted now. Hi, I'm Pushti. I'm from India. And basically, I'm a healer. Overall, I do a lot of things. But what I have touched upon recently is something called Creatrix. Creatrix transformology. It is something that helps us women, especially women, get out a lot of trauma from their system, even generational trauma that has been passed down, which sometimes has not been discovered. But once we start understanding that there's something wrong and something can be corrected, that's where I come in. And I help you women, and us women actually, to get out of that without any drama, without replaying all the trauma that's happened and having to repeat it again and again. What I do is I just help you think about the emotions that you felt there, the belief systems that you held because of what happened, and then push, we take it all out. And one of them, one emotion, one belief system takes hardly 20 minutes to get out. You can be holding it for the rest of your life, but if you give me 20 minutes, I'll let you get rid of it.
Lovely. All right, thank you. Jenica.
Hi, I'm Jenica Haywood. If you do go back and watch part one, that was an extremely important and wonderful episode. This topic of domestic violence is one that is close to my heart because I've had personal experience with it, along with other things as well. So my work in the world currently is similar as far as breaking down belief systems and thought processes that keep us stuck in our current reality. But I call myself an integration and ascension coach because as you walk this path, and as we're going to talk about today, the empowerment after abuse, the path after finding your traumas or finding these aspects of you that are no longer aligned and no longer supporting you. There's a whole journey that you go on that involves finding these aspects of yourself, healing them, bringing them forward, and integrating them into your current now being, which assists in the process of ascending and enlightening and activating your DNA and your cellular structure in higher and higher levels that continue to support exponentially. So I think in a future vidcast, I'll go into that a little bit further. There's quite a few different facets that I involve myself with, as I am a survivor of ritual sexual abuse and domestic abuse, and a few different eating disorders, mental disorders, the ways that trauma presents itself in our life. So it's been my, I can now say, honor to walk this path and be able to bring many gifts and understandings to anyone else that is also finding themselves on their own path that can be quite dark at times. So today we're going to focus more on the domestic violence aspect as opposed to other forms of abuse. And I'm just excited to be here. Really, this kind of work, this kind of movement, this personal journey is one that I live for. It's more than a passion. It's an absolute soul path. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. The callings that we have based on what we live in our lives are so multi-layered and multifaceted. And so to be able to, as you two have articulated, to be able to say, here's what I can help you with, here's what I've been through, here's how I can contribute, is really powerful. I have some of my own similar things I can relate to as far as being a victim of ritual sexual abuse, understanding blood cult rituals and things like that. And I help people that are in those spaces that are ready to move beyond just the entry level part of that into really digging into how they can free themselves from all of the trauma that came from that. It so rolls over into so many different things. And so here we are, we're talking about domestic violence. And a lot of times people may find themselves in a place where they're like, I don't know how I got here. How did this happen? This didn't begin this way. I would have never entered this saying, absolutely, I want this experience. Because in most cases, you're entering an experience expecting to have a whole different, loving, supportive, nurturing experience. And then it turns into something that you're traumatized by exiting from, and it's not leaving you alone yet. And so having these conversations about broadening this information and just knowing that there's support and understanding out there is really what we're looking at. And so as we were kind of talking about this before we stepped in, Pushti wanted to bring in some awareness that was a little bit beyond maybe a regular definition of how you might recognize or relate to domestic abuse, domestic violence. So I'm just going to turn it over to her for a moment so she can share what she's got in mind.
Thank you, Asia. What I did want to bring into people's awareness is that domestic abuse is usually thought of as partner abuse, which is called domestic in general. But we forget, or we don't really pay attention to the kind of abuse which may not be as blatant, is also actually present from parents. Okay. Now, parents don't only mean mother and father. It could be auntie, uncle, grandparent, anything that is parent-like. Okay. And then it also comes from the house with siblings. The thing is that there is always, it's a lot of fun sometimes, sibling rivalry. But if it goes beyond a point, it can actually be very abusive to one of the siblings. Yeah. And what happens is what our parents teach us, how our siblings behave with us. As we are children, it seeps into us really strongly. And once that happens, we actually start expecting the world to behave like that with us. And we all know that we're conditioned in a particular manner as we're children. As we grow up, we start expecting the world to be like that because that becomes our safe space, even if it is self-neglect and self-hurt and self-harm. If it's different, we don't accept it very easily. So what I want to show people, or what I want to bring to people's attention is that when you're thinking, okay, why do I keep attracting the wrong partner, for example? Think about what relationship your parents had. Think about actually the kind of shows that you people saw when you were growing up. Look at the people around you, as in parents or siblings or anybody around you. What kind of relationships do they have? What kind of relationships did everybody around you have, even friends of family, etc.? Because you definitely subconsciously wanted the same thing because you wanted to fit in. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't fit in, you're not the right person. So to be the right person, to be accepted and to be taken in, what usually happens is we start fitting into the molds that are already open for us, not creating our own molds, which is a lot of trauma that lasts you through the rest of your life if you don't start dealing with it. That's what I wanted to bring attention to.
Thank
It's
you.
really interesting too. I mean, as you're talking about that, I'm reflecting on my own experience. And you know, in my childhood, I would not at all define my growing up in my household unit. I mean, when we get into like extended relatives, this all changes, but never really experienced domestic abuse within that family unit, within the close family unit. However, the the relationship dynamic that I experienced, particularly between my father and myself, is that was the roots in setting up for me attracting my domestic abuse partner, because of the dynamic set up between my father and I, and what I was noticing that I needed. I then turned in my adult life to these other men to try and seek it out, to try and receive this, you know, this love, this approval, the validation. I mean, you know, we could dive into that, but it's interesting to me that it may not always start out, you know, as domestic abuse or domestic violence, but as you're saying, like, look at the relationships around you. There's a lot of gold to be mined within our relationships. You can learn ample things about yourself, your behaviors, your thought patterns, your belief systems. Just as you look at your your first family unit and what you experienced there, I would not in my, you know, I wouldn't have looked back and gone, ooh, here's a potential issue that might cause issues in the future. But as I, again, finally got myself out of the abusive relationship, finally walked away and instilled enough value within myself to make that happen, the empowerment portion of after abuse came when I started going full circle, not just back to the relationship itself, and, you know, asking those questions of what happened, what would I have changed, how did this kind of spiral into the experience that I'm now really needing to heal from, but diving back into my own experience of growing up and the love that I was seeking out. I mean, that journey post relationship, post being in close proximity with, you know, an abusive sibling, parent, partner, that was a lot of unwinding my own childhood and realizing, wow, this was not a relationship of love. This was a relationship of being addicted to love, trying to find it based on, you know, trying to earn it based on my actions, trying to be worthy of it. And in a very painful but very beautiful way, I found out that's what I needed even as a little girl, and I wasn't receiving it. And that doesn't necessarily, again, my childhood was not one where I had a father coming home drunk or really aggressive, abusive behaviors. It was largely the lack of action that I was asking for as a daughter. Yeah.
That seems to be a really important part too, because the lack of or the absence of also needs to be included in this equation, because we've got this spectrum of, you know, what we think it is and what it actually is. And having ourselves, you know, our desire, like what you've pointed out here, we seek for what's familiar. So you both said that. And going into that familiarity, if you can, in a way that is in awareness, you can actually look at what it is that's in your relationship and say, what's presenting here for me? But when you're absolutely in, everything is escalated and you're in more of a survival mode, and you're constantly looking for safety or to please or to ease what's going on, it may feel overwhelming to look for that awareness. However, that's what has to be. You do have to look at that and ask yourself those questions. Is this where I am? Is this what's going on? You know, and it's not exactly the easiest thing to do because of the self-awareness that's required. And sometimes you just don't even have the answers, but you know that there's the pain, right? And so after you've exited something like that, just because you're gone from that physical presence of a family member, of your partner, of your spouse, that didn't close the door on the whole thing, and now you've got this great new, whole like horizon that's in front of you, and you get to walk forward. You're still coming forward with some of the same things that you haven't yet addressed or healed, which is, what am I familiar with? What am I looking for? What's the absence of something? What is the presence of something? You've eliminated the presence of something, but now, because it's not there anymore, right, you're going to start looking for it again, because you're going to feel off kilter. So this self-knowing space of the empowerment side of this is so critical. And then it's a really good opportunity for you to feel very kind to yourself. Like, there's so many ways we can shame ourselves in being in these relationships, exiting them, not really knowing if we did the right thing and what's going on. And we've put ourselves into some really crazy situations because now there's not the support, or now you're, living on your own, or now you've got all of these children that you're trying to take care of. Like, that doesn't eliminate the fact that all of those things are still present. It does help you, though, look into more of your own self journey. And again, it can be feeling like you're walking up an incredibly tall mountain without any kind of safety net or rope or anything like that. And yet to continue doing that is where this where the empowerment does come from, because eventually you can see that you're making progress and that you can see. So do you guys have anything to add to something like that? Like, where are you in the whole vision of empowering, being empowered on this side of a domestic abuse situation?
So I'd like to add this. There was a time when I had this one client where she told me that, I have run away from home, but actually I don't know what to do because I'm so lost. I'm making the same mistakes again. I'm behaving in exactly the same manner. And she said something very interesting. She said, my mother's voice still rings in my ears. She said, I don't know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel the most important thing for us when we get out of a situation like that, like you rightly mentioned, Asia, we've taken that one thing out that hurt us. What do we do then? Because there is a gaping hole that we need to fill over there, right? What do we do there? We don't go back to our normal patterns, which we are very attracted to and magnetized towards. What we actually start doing is we start taking a moment, and this is very important. We use the pause mechanism in our body. We pause ourselves and we say, yes, this is what I'm going towards, but do I really want to do that? And when I told her that, she said, but I don't know what I want. I said, that is what you start figuring out right now. What makes you comfortable and actually comfortable? What tastes good to your mouth? Because you've always been trained to eat certain things, or you've always been trained to drink certain things, or you've been taught not to go on this side and not to go there, or only do something. What do you personally like? This is the biggest thing of value you can give yourself, an understanding of who you really are, which of course is not going to be with a snap of a finger. It's not going to happen very fast. But if you start on that journey, you will make mistakes, but you will come to a space where you say, not this, I like this. I do not want to do this. I feel like doing this. And nobody's saying you're going to get it right the very first time. But the most important thing is to constantly ask yourself this question. Do I like it? Do I want it? Does this feel right to me beyond everything that I've been taught? And you're going to cry. You're going to fight with yourself because, your mother's voice or whoever's voice is still going to ring in your head and say, you are not supposed to do that. And, there's going to be this internal conflict and battle with this, but I feel like doing it. The little girl that was not allowed to leave her hair open maybe and had to tie a ponytail every day, to just let your hair go, to cut it short sometimes. Maybe you are someone who likes short hair, not like that really long flowing mane. You don't like that. It's too much pain to take care of for all you know. But it's going to be difficult. But you will have the courage to do it. And after you do it, you're still going to pull your hair out and say, oh my God, I should not have done that. But the whole point is you're going to get used to it. And then you're going to realize, oh, I'm so glad I chopped my hair off. Mm-hmm. It's going to feel like that, right? So it's this journey that you take from understanding who you are to understanding who you had become. this is a very important journey, according to what I have realized that we need to do. And it's not an easy journey, but every step, there's just one really important question that you need to ask. Do I want, need, have this? Very importantly.
I love how you bring up the pause because that's one of the main things that it's kind of like a blessing and a curse in the way that you could look at it a few different ways, but that space that you receive when you have taken action based on you and only you, pulling yourselves away from whatever abuser or abusive situation you find yourself in, there's inevitably this space that you kind of stop and you get to look around and almost, in one way, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, okay, I have some space here. And in another, it's kind of, how did I get here? And I don't even know where I am, or I don't like this terrain. Like I've been bushwhacking and fighting through this as hard as I can. And now when I can finally put the machete down, I don't even know if I want to be here. And it can be quite disorienting and very discouraging after so much work and trying, and I wanted the relationship to work, or, all of these self-talk, self-thoughts that are coming through. But that is the first opportunity that you really get to ask yourself, do I like this? Is this where I want to be? Have I just climbed a mountain that I don't even want to be on? I mean, this is the beginning of the unraveling process. And the most magical part of it is the space you give yourself, the pause, the questioning of, do I like this? One of the most synchronistic and not planned out things that I did after getting out of my relationship was I took a trip to Europe and just randomly and decided to go, but I found myself there like freaking out because I had not made a decision for myself in years at this point. And so here I am in this strange country I've never been before. I'm with no one else. I'm totally solo. And I have to make every single decision. And, on one side, it was like, wow, this is crazy amazing. And the other side, I was absolutely terrified. And I didn't know how to answer that question. I don't know what I want. I'm so used to judging what I want based on the situation and circumstances that present me. And this unraveling journey, I mean, you really do get to decide if you just want to walk yourself down and off of the mountain that you just tried so hard to climb and go towards the valley, or go, hike another mountain. It's very difficult. It's very challenging. There's a lot of shame and guilt that can come through. There's a lot of I should haves or would ifs, or all of those things. But ultimately, that space, that opportunity to actually look at why you do what you do, and if that is still something you like, or even if you've lost something like that. I mean, I remember I loved wearing hoop earrings, and at some point in time that just was unacceptable. And as I walked myself off of this mountain I didn't even want to be on, I realized, like, on the way down, I picked back up my hoop earrings and I was like, I do like these. Like, they bring me, like, I lost them for a minute, but now I'm going to bring them back in. And oh my gosh, this bright red lipstick that brings attention, and I wasn't allowed to bring any attention to myself, or this beautiful dress. I mean, there's an unending amount of aspects of yourself that have either been lost, buried, hidden, undiscovered. The journey may be one of the most difficult that you ever embark upon, but it's the most rewarding and liberating and fulfilling. And you walk away knowing yourself, like really making a best friend out of yourself, making yourself your biggest advocate, your best partner, your strongest asset, and anchor those things into you, knowing this is something I like, I enjoy, and is important to me. And moving forward, no one's going to take that away from me unless it's me. You start realizing and creating boundaries and beliefs and thought processes that you didn't even know to have prior to this situation. And now as you're walking yourself out of it, it's inevitable. You inevitably come up with these, like, this is who I am. And that is unwavering. And that amount of strength and confidence and trust and love in yourself is invaluable. It's what I cherish most from unwinding the relationship and diving into my childhood and realizing how much I was trying to be accepted and conform and change myself and shave this part off and mold this so that I could be loved and I could be accepted and, you know, given the things that I just truly needed, that we all need as children. And we start giving it to ourselves. And then we don't need anyone to give it to us. So we stop searching for it. And life, physical reality, life right in front of your eyes begins to completely change. You end up on a totally different mountain or in a completely different valley, or oh my God, you find the ocean and there's a whole other world there.
That's such a great illustration of the journey, kind of an overview of the journey where you're starting and how you end. And I want to point out, or just kind of focus on that for a minute, because on this empowerment side, the journey's worth it. I'm just going to tell you, I went through some similar things on my own. And whenever you maybe recognize other people that happen to have, you know, self, like knowing or some empowerment things that you admire, and you're just starting in this journey, and your favorite phrase at the moment is, I don't know what I want. I don't know what this is. That's okay. I think that's informative. Just to say, I don't know can be the beginning place. I think what we often do is we use those words of I don't know and we just shut the door, because basically it's not that you don't know, it's that you're uncomfortable with not knowing. It's you're uncomfortable with recognizing that you don't know. It's uncomfortable with the fact that you have that responsibility to start knowing, because in the past, especially part of this domestic abuse is somebody, you know, you've been black, you know, like what is it? Not blacklighted. What is it? Oh my gosh, I just forgot the word. Where you've been told what it is that you think. People have filled in the blanks for you for what you want. You've been trained in what you want. Gaslighted is what I was seeing. You don't, you know, like, no, that you don't really want that. This is not what you told me. This isn't what you said. And so you get used to really defaulting to somebody else or to something else. And that can become a little bit addictive, to be honest. That can be a default that feels comfortable, and it can be kind of smoothed over in the idea that you're just like, well, I really don't care. I don't have an opinion. Well, that's another place to begin. Get an opinion. Get an opinion of what food you want to eat, what restaurant you want to go to. Get an opinion about, and if you have your two favorites and you're just not really, you know, you're just like, well, either could be great. You're still in a practice of stepping away from the I don't know as closing the door and opening the door into, well, I don't know what sounds fun. Like, give yourself another phrase to be on the other side of the I don't know, because that has been, you know, it can be such an excuse. And as Jenica is talking about, I mean, as she's talking about hacking her way through this jungle, it's so fascinating to me, because on the other side, or as you start clearing this away, what you are on is this journey of yourself, the journey to yourself, the journey of knowing more. And so she mentioned this whole process of like, well, I should have this and I should have that, and this doubt about this, and why did I go there? Those are the kind of things that, as you're, you know, she's talked about having this machete, like you're hacking away at and addressing those things that are standing as barriers. And those are really important to do. And sometimes you're able to uproot them on your own, and other times you actually need somebody's help. This is why community is so good, but it's also our responsibility as people in the community to be very aware of where we might be doing the same thing, shaming each other, or stepping into a place where we want to save somebody because their uncomfortability is triggering our uncomfortability. her situation is triggering an old situation that hasn't been healed here. And so we want to like start, pushing them in different directions because we're uncomfortable. So it can be kind of, it's like hacking through a jungle. Like you're not necessarily knowing what path you're going to. You're not necessarily knowing the direction exactly, but really being in the practice of giving yourself the privilege of saying, I don't know, and then not letting that be the place where you shut down, but just recognizing, oh, there's another doorway to walk through. There's another way for me to step further into understanding or recognizing myself or some of the things that trigger me or things like that. But it's powerful because then you also get to start asking yourself questions, not just what is my food preference or what are my, what do I want to wear today, but more really deeper questions when you're in a space of calm where you can say, what was I looking for? And that's what Jenica's brought up is like, what was I looking for? She was in abusive relationships, but really what she was looking for was a healing of a relationship with her father and some family dynamics that were completely veiled because she was in these other relationships. I think giving yourself that privilege is also really important. Jen, what were you going to say?
Oh, just it's intriguing how we mirror the inner workings of what's going on with our thoughts, beliefs, patterns, our entire orientation towards life really loves to mirror itself to us through our relationships. I love, love, love. I don't know if this is a quote or just something I've always continued to tell myself, but there's you always have exactly what you need in your immediate proximity to deepen and further your growth. And largely it's in the relationships around you and your reactions and thoughts and beliefs towards them. Any belief from everything that we've been talking about. I mean, I almost don't even want to name beliefs because they can be there's so many possibilities, right? That's why they're sometimes so hard to peg down because you don't even realize you're believing it. One of the core beliefs that allowed me to stay in my abusive relationship for years was just this internal belief that never made its way into my thinking mind of words. But it was that I had to earn my love. I had to earn the love given to me. So there was a reason for it and I could prove that I deserved it. And that belief, that structure, that mechanism working its way, as a part of me, mirrored itself, created itself, it showed itself to me as a being who would only give me love if I deserved it. And when we talk about deserving and these kinds of definitions, who is the final say? Who determines whether I'm worthy of the love or not, or maybe a little bit this time, but not a ton, or you really messed up there? It was his definitions, not mine. So it's interesting that this space that you create when you really allow yourself to look at yourself with new eyes, with innocent eyes, with just curious observation type, interest. You really start discovering that it's not, our minds, what goes through our minds is, it can be very telling, sure, but you getting into the core of things you truly believe, that I couldn't just have love because love can be given freely, that I had to prove it and earn it. Like, it created itself as a whole person, a whole relationship, and an entire experience in my life that was simultaneously awesome and excruciatingly painful. And that's kind of where I'm like, as we're getting rid of misconceptions and judgments and opening awareness, these kind of relationships are never all bad. They are
Right.
never 100% just painful. There are always aspects of pleasure and joy and and something that's fulfilling. Otherwise, how long would it take us to be like, wow, there's literally nothing here that benefits me? I got love. I received love in the capacity that it could be given, but my capacity for receiving was mirrored in that as well. So it's just, it's intriguing to see how our inner really aspects and pieces of ourselves are reflected back to us in our immediate surroundings. Just look around and it'll tell you something about yourself you may not know.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true. Because the first thing that I believe we end up losing when we're in this kind of a situation is that child within us. Because we're manipulated, right? This means you can only deserve that much love, or you've got to prove yourself, like you were saying. If we can manage to tap back into the awe that we had as a child, I mean, that really kind of brings us to a space of openness within ourselves. Because that child is never close to any sort of experiencing. That child is just always wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, And actually, if you are wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, okay, I don't feel nice about this. I'm going to run away.
Mm-hmm.
I want something. I need to make a noise. I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. What happens is we forget that we actually were born to be really simple people. If you want something, you ask for it. If you don't want something, put it on the side. And if you like something that is not, very close to hand, you crawl up to it or you walk up to it. If on the way someone says no, and you start questioning them, you look at them very disapprovingly saying, why won't you give me what I want? It's as simple as that. The thing is, when I say it, it sounds like a lot of fun. But if you think about it, in our daily lives, if we were actually functioning from the now mature but yet childhood space, we would understand that when we want something, there's a reason for why we want it. It's not always stupid. The stupidity, so-called silliness, comes only after we start thinking. Here I'm talking about the absolute child, the 0 to 3, who's purely impulsive, and who wants food because it's hungry, and wants a blanket because it's cold, and wants to be picked up and cleaned because they either peed or pooed. Simple. It's not like rocket science. Unfortunately, what has happened is because of the fact that we have been manipulated out of being that innocent and that simple and running our lives like it is so-called meant to be, for the lack of a better phrase, that is why we get into all sorts of trouble, is what I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to being that innocent child, you've got to pick one thing that works for you. Like, for example, if I look at it, I had this one picture of me, okay, where I'm just sitting there and smiling. And believe me, there is no care in the world. I have no clue what is going on. And I literally look like Medusa's little sister because I had curly hair like that, without a care in the world. And I just look at myself and I'm like, what was she thinking? If she was in my space today, what would she be thinking? That's what my go-to is, If you can find something that is your go-to, and that brings you in that space of how was I really as a child? It could be, it could be a stuffed toy that you had. There are people who have it even at 50. There could be a blanket that you had. There could just be one word or a sound or a song that, was played over your crib or something like that you now play for your children. I don't know. Something like that. Something that anchors you back to being that child, that innocence, Janika, that you spoke about, the innocence that we lose. That innocence, if we just had that one connect to that, that is what really sorts out a lot of our mind. Because then we don't want to think craftily. We don't want to think in a calculative manner, like I've done this much, so I should get that much. I am paid according to my worth. Suddenly you realize my worth is not calculatable, for the lack of a better word. Please correct me. I get very funked with words. So, it's like you can't calculate my worth. I am like invaluable. And I was born like that, and which is why, more than anything else, I deserve love without boundaries. You cannot tell me there's that much you to deserve because you did that much. I was born, I deserve to be loved, the end.
Right.
It's that. But I feel a lot of people they disconnect from their creator. Now, whatever you want to call it God, you want to call it religion, you want to call it spirituality, whatever you want to call it, that one connect that people miss out on, I feel that is what kind of takes them away from understanding their level of deserving.
Mhm.
And then when you have a deep understanding of your level of deserving, you will not take less from anyone. You will actually stand up. Yes, standing up for yourself is another story altogether. It's very difficult. It's not simple. But what you need to understand is what happens when you stand up for yourself. People start questioning you,
Mhm.
right? You don't start getting frazzled with those questions. You answer those questions for yourself. And when you answer them for yourself, it makes you stronger. It makes you believe in yourself more. So in a way, again, like you said, no, it's a blessing and a curse, Janika. It's a blessing and a curse, whatever it is. So people kind of pushing you against the wall, saying, how can you do this? Why would you do this? When would you do this? How dare you do this? You answer all those questions for yourself, not for them. And when you answer them for yourself, you're like, so I wanted it because of there. I wanted it then because of this reason. I wanted it now because of this reason. Once you understand your own reasons, you have a chance to go forward and create and start manifesting your own personality, which is, I think, the biggest thing that we're all looking for when we start coming out of any sort of trauma.
Well, and it's amazing too, because when you answer those questions for yourself, you then get to determine whether or not you want to justify them to others or keep them for yourself, because you have that right. There's two things that I wanted to just add and highlight of what you said. Because so much of any healing journey really does bring you back to that child, that 0 to 3, your natural born state. And one of the main things I wanted to highlight is when, number one, the child knows what it wants instinctively. That's not a thought process. It's not am I hungry now? Do I need love now? I mean, think about when you're going through your wants and desires, how much in your head are you versus how much in your body, and how much of your instinct and groundedness is coming forward of like, no, this is a core desire, need, want. I mean, again, words are extremely limited in some capacity, but they instinctively know what they want and desire, and that is always piggybacked with being completely unapologetic. They don't apologize for taking up space. They don't apologize for making noise, for being, for waking you up at 2, 3 in the morning. Like, they don't apologize for existing. And I would say that in the empowerment after abuse, in the journey of discovering yourself again, of taking away the layers that were placed upon you that are not yours, the two core things that you grow and cultivate and care for is your right to exist without having to apologize for it. Because for my experience and many others that I've worked with and talked with through this, you don't even have the value to feel like you can just be who you are in any moment. You have to have an excuse or a validating factor for that. And learning what you want is another whole other trick. And that one I would say is much more fun. But really, like, pull yourself back to that infant, to that young, to that core essence of you that knows from the inside out existence is magical. You being here is not only needed and necessary, but is abundant and blessing and beautiful. And please don't ever think that you existing is anything less than absolute perfection and wonder. Those two core things of just learning to be you without needing a validating factor, and learning what it is that you want naturally because that's just what you want and you don't need a reason. It doesn't need to make sense with life. It doesn't need to, do you have a long-term plan? How are you going to take care of things? No, you can just have wants and follow those purely because you exist and you're a creative creature. Those were two of the hardest things for me to gain back. Those naturally instill very deep value. as you say, Pushti, like I am invaluable. Like there is nothing else that is exactly like me, and because of that, I am the most unique and the most. I'm losing words, but you guys get my whole energy.
The energy that you're bringing in, I love the exchange that just happened here. In fact, I love it so much that I just want to say, like, if anybody's listening to this, like, go back and rewind this and listen to this again, or even like send that little portion to somebody that needs to hear that, because I was thinking, it's so funny, I was thinking the same thing, and the conversation just naturally went there, right? I would love to be able to add something here as well. And then if it kind of, if you both want to kind of expound on this too, where we are in that connecting into that child, into that deserving, into that actual knowing that, well, everything that was just described here, Jenica and Pushti, I feel like really kind of illustrated some really key elements. Like, it's gold, it's just gold that you can go back and re-listen to. It's a process though. It's not like one day you just heard what what we said here, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's right, I'm worth it, right? You need to be able to gently, or even suddenly, it just depends on where you are in your healing process, but you need to be able to take those pieces and be really gentle with yourself about that. So, if you're in the habit, or you have this training to justify yourself, because that's what has been so conditioned into you, why do you want that? Well, why are we going there? And you have to keep telling that partner, or telling that individual, it's like, let me justify why my needs are important, or why my preference to going to, the park, it matters. You're going to run into that with yourself too, because that's your habit. And so as you start this path and you're just like, all right, this matters to me. What's my preference? I want to do this. I would say you probably have a big part of you jump up and say, well, why? Because that's the next voice that you're just anticipating. And now there's nobody bringing that in. So there could be a part of you that just steps into that role. Well, why? That's kind of stupid. Why would you want to do that? You don't need to have pink shoes. You've got or whatever it is. Stepping into that and just having that gentle practice with really self-actuating and saying, I don't know, but it feels good to me, is a really great starting point. And then as you get more and more used to not having to justify anything to yourself, you're not going to be justifying to somebody out there, but it is a journey. And I know that, Jenica, you can definitely speak to that, as you just did, like where we end up and where you end up as you go through this process is so incredible, but the process itself is really important. So even getting frustrated with yourself, where you're just like, I'm so tired of this, I just want somebody to tell me, what to do, or I just want this, or I just want that. That's also part of it, because then again, there's another informative open doorway. And that could actually just be the time to either ask yourself those questions, or just sit in a quiet place and say, I just need to rest. I just need to stop asking these questions. I mean, again, it's all very self-evaluative and very, directional. And sometimes the direction is to take a bath, just kind of go in, light some candles, and just take a rest, and just kind of go, wow, this is so overwhelming to me, and be as gentle as you can. I think it was brought out, there's going to be emotions associated with this. There's going to be things that you're going to be letting go of, that you're going to, kind of mourn. It's really stepping in and taking responsibility appropriately. Is just, it wasn't done timely, doing this as children and being allowed that, you're now having to do as an adult. So you're also adulting, but you're also now really giving yourself a lot of child gentleness, and it's no small task. So just understand what you're doing isn't just like, oh yeah, okay, that's right, but this is how I'm, of course. It's really it's the best work you could do. It's individual journeying for sure. It's going to be based on your individual experiences, and it is worth every bit. And so I'm just gonna, like, I just wanted to bring that part in there. Is there anything else you two want to add to that?
I think I would just say, yeah, the emotional aspects. And, you know, of course, everyone has their own journey, but I mean, this is kind of like soul crushing, world destruction kind of emotions when you start. I mean, you've already experienced that and getting yourself, you know, with the realization of this is an abusive relationship and what am I going to do here and how do we get out of it? And everyone has their own very unique set of circumstances that they have to navigate. But I just don't want to downplay, you know, this road is the only one that's going to bring you to you, which you are your greatest and most valuable asset. So doing anything you can to work for yourself is always going to benefit you more exponentially. But I don't want to downplay the difficulty of what this is. And you rebirth yourself multiple times in this process. And if you've been through your own little death and rebirth, you know it can be world shattering, and you don't really know if you're going to be the phoenix that rises from the ashes, or if this is going to be the thing that just kind of takes you and you can't do anymore, you know, as you're bringing up self-harm and the ways that we show ourselves our worth, which when you're kind of in that level of having none, it can be quite devastating. And you know, each of us has, you know, we have hearts that understand and can carry and know the depth of that pain and the amount of destruction that can take place when you're pivoting and choosing yourself when you have never done that before, or discovering what that is. Like I will stand here with you and tell you there are no words for the kind of morphing and forming and rebirthing that takes place. But standing on the other side of multiple of those, I have never been more myself and more free and more confident. And my life has never been so abundant and so beautiful and miraculous. There is another side to this. The empowerment after abuse is tangible. It is real. You will see it in every facet of your life, but the process there it takes destruction to rebuild.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to mention, which Asia also mentioned, is at sometimes it can just be a bath. You know, the importance of rest. Because when we are in these situations, you know, we don't understand it, but our entire body gets tense. You know, and it becomes the new normal for us, just having a tense body. We have so much body ache, we have all sorts of headaches, and we have all sorts of emotional, you know, ups and downs and all of that. But what we don't realize is we can start with one thing. We can start with the body. The first thing that you do is you check in with your body and figure out where you have your knots. Where do you feel you're all caught up? You know, just breathe. The thing is that our normal breath is quite deep. But if we realize when we're going through something like this, our breath becomes short. It comes right into the upper part of our chest, you know, and we don't realize it. But a continuous short breath can be very deteriorating for the physical body, because we're not getting as much energy and oxygen as we need, which is what will later create a lot of issues. Mostly it's autoimmune diseases that manifest because of that, you know. And I know that because I have manifested MS, that is multiple sclerosis, for myself through a journey like that. And it's now actually going away when I started realizing I need to relax. And it's not just physical relaxation, it goes beyond that as well, but it starts with physical relaxation. You've got to understand the moment the moment you feel like, and you say, oh, just those two things that I want to finish. No, stop. You know, and then through that no stop, which one part of you definitely will say, will pop up the monster of guilt, which is unstoppable. And it's not your voice, it's someone else's voice in your head that is the guilt. Because your voice said stop. And someone else ended up saying, oh my God, it's just two things. Why can't you finish them? See, this is why you never finish work on time. You're always late. You're lazy. You procrastinate. No, you don't. You're tired, so you rest.
Mm.
It's all right. That's not running away. You're not running away. You know, it's very important to just start with a deep breath. And I always tell my clients, when you wake up in the morning, take a moment. It takes less than an entire minute, it takes a couple of seconds to check how deep your breath is and to train your breath to go in deep enough through the day. Just deep breathing, when you wake up in the morning, to remind your body and your, breathing system that you have got to breathe deep. Respiratory system is the word I was looking for. That you got to breathe nice and deep. Because if you do that, your entire day changes color. It changes taste. Entirely. Exactly that one sigh that just came out, that relief.
We need to do like a whole like trauma and the body and the things that the body tells you and how it handles stuff, because it's if anyone is resonating with what Pushti just brought up and want to dive any deeper, especially around this, like
tell us, we'll
reach
get
out
there.
to any of us, because the body wisdom is incredible. And even, like you're saying, breath is air. It translates to the body. You're safe, you're calm, you're loved. Water disperses energy. So when you've got a ton built up and you're freaking out, it disperses it. I mean, there is ample, and that is such a passionate subject of mine. I'm glad you brought that up. It's huge.
That. This is a great thing that, like, I feel like, again, this is just going to flow naturally over into the next part of this series. And we're at the end of our time, so we need to wrap this up. It's been really delightful. I love this conversation. There's so many real truths in here, like the depths of what it is that we're talking about. It's coming forward. It's all here. And I just really appreciate all of the wisdom that was shared. Definitely. And if you've got any questions, or if you want to connect with anybody here at Where's Your Focus, you're more than welcome to reach out. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.